Hello everybody, and welcome to this week's weekly webinar. My name is Jimmy, and I'm one of the main developers on FormsViewer. And this week, we are going to be talking about some of the new stuff that's coming up in FormsViewer 2.4, which we're planning to release within the next couple weeks. Just to give you a quick rundown of the changes before we go into them in more detail. One of the big things is we're making some improvements to the form loading time. I know some of you have noted that the forms tend to be a bit slow to load in FormsViewer, and we're working hard to fix that. We're making some improvements this time around, and we're gonna keep working to get those load times down. We've made a couple of very small usability improvements to people pickers, just to address some of the pain points in using them. There's still more room for improvement there. We're going to be making more improvement, but we covered the most important things this time around. You also the ability to query person columns from lists is now working. Previously, if you tried to query a person column, you just wouldn't get any results. List forms are supported as well. You can, I don't know how many of you are familiar with list forms, but there's a special kind of infopath form which is bound to actually a list in SharePoint and has special functionality for querying and submitting to that list. Those are now supported. Also, the ability to create PDFs within your forms is a feature we're adding this time around. We've made some date formatting improvements and added some new features around those. We've got a new rule editor for actually editing your forms rules right in your browser. So we're going to be showing you that a little later. And then a couple of Dropdown bug fixes. So first, let's talk about loading time. So when you load up a form in FormsViewer, one of the first things that the FormsViewer app does within your browser is it calls the server to get the template's definition, which is basically the template's manifest, its main XML, and a couple other files. If you're querying any XML files on load, it'll get those as part of the definition. So right now, what that involves is you can see here your browser queries the backend server, and then that server goes off to Azure storage and retrieves each of those files, sort of bundles them together, and then sends them back to your browser. Once that's done, the app within the browser again will need to retrieve a few more files in order to load the form up. So what it does right now is it gets them one by one sequentially, and you can see in this diagram it's getting those sequentially. We found that this part down here was actually not intentional. We were supposed to be including these data connection definitions within the template definition bundle, but because of a bit of an oversight, these were getting queried after the fact and sort of slowing things down. So we've done two things to improve that, actually. One is that we're including those data source definitions right in the template definition. And another thing is that ahead of time, what we're actually doing is bundling that definition together and storing it as a single file in Azure storage. So instead of the server having to go off and get the files one at a time in parallel and sort of package them together, it's just getting a single compressed file from Azure storage and sending it right back to you. So that should help speed things up a lot, and we've seen some great improvements in the loading time. In terms of improvements to people pickers, I'm going to be showing this in a demo in a couple of minutes. But one of the things was when you opened a people picker, you'd have that drop down at the top to select which source you want to query the people from. And we haven't removed that drop down in case for whatever reason you might need it. But one little thing we've done to make it a little easier to use is that the cursor will now autofocus into the search box, so you can immediately start typing your search. In addition to that, you can see here, pressing enter in the search box will now carry out the search, like search boxes tend to do. Previously, you had to go off your mouse and go and click the search icon. The icon is still available if you're using a mobile device or anything, but now you can actually press enter in the search box, and that'll perform your search. As I alluded to earlier, you should now be able to query person columns from SharePoint after this update. If you have a SharePoint list connection that queries person columns, you'll be able to use that. A little thing to note here is that older versions of the FormsViewer app file were missing a piece that enabled this, that allows us to do this. And what you'll see if you have one of those old app files is that the query will succeed, but it'll pop up an error saying that the person part of that query failed. So if you see that error, if you want to preemptively prevent it, I would recommend going to our InfoPath dev site and getting the latest version of the app file and uploading it to your app catalog in SharePoint. List forms. So this is a big feature we're adding this time around, is the ability to use list forms. And as I said, list forms are special kinds of InfoPath forms that are tied to a specific list. The main data source is actually set up to query and submit to that list, and it's sort of designed to be tied into list items rather than XML documents. By default, it doesn't actually submit XML documents to SharePoint. It submits list items. One of the great things about using these list forms in FormsViewer now is that you have access to the full set of QRules commands. You can use those within your list forms to do pretty much anything you like. And to use, sorry, I have a question coming in. You can use QRules commands to do pretty much anything you like, and if you want to do like special layouts and things, you've probably seen some of our forms previously with the exciting modern layouts. You can do that even within your list forms. So we have a question here. I have supposed a preview because I don't know FormsViewer. So this webinar is mainly intended for people who have some familiarity with FormsViewer and know what it's about. I'm about to go into one demo where you'll see some of these new features. But if you're completely new to FormsViewer, I would recommend checking out some of our other webinars where we go through some of the basics. That's not what this particular webinar is about. So yeah, let's have a look at these list forms. And we have another question. Is there any special that needs to be done to activate the list form functionality, or can it be developed in Designer as normal? So yes, basically all you need to do is have a list form. So you would create a list form in Designer using that option to create one, or you can, in SharePoint, there is a customize button. Let's see, customize an InfoPath button. I think this button only works in Internet Explorer, but the other route is to start from InfoPath and go from there. So once you have that XSN, you're pretty much good to go. You can upload it to FormsViewer and start using it. So here we have a list that I've set up. It's just an employee list. It's got a couple of columns, an employee ID, a phone number, a department. And I've already set this up to be tied to my form in FormsViewer. So I can click New Item here. We see the typical FormsViewer loading screen. And we can basically pretty much use all the list form functionality here. So I used the find button to look up an existing employee. Instead, I can actually use this to create a new one. So I'll just add Hillary here. We've got the people picker. So you can see here, as I mentioned, the cursor is autofocused to the search box. And I can search just by clicking enter, by hitting enter, and there we go. We'll just enter some random value for employee ID, some random number for phone number, and she is in our IT department. Submit that, and there we go. There she is in our list. Now I can also click any item here in the list to open that up in FormsViewer. And here we go. We can see this people picker is actually using the new change to be able to query person columns from lists. So that's how I'm able to have this value queried into the form. And yeah, we can change my phone number to add a number at the end. And we can see down here we've got a unique ID. What this is actually demonstrating is that I've used QRules to generate a GUID, so I can give each employee a GUID. So that's just a nifty use of FormsViewer there, nifty use of QRules there. And so I've added some digits to my phone number. I'll click submit. And there we go. And we can see that the loading time here is actually seems to be pretty good. Sometimes not so great, but yeah, the transition back to SharePoint is pretty quick. So if you've got existing list forms, this is great for that. There may be situations where you want to just customize a list and edit things using FormsViewer, so it's great for that as well. And we can just take a quick look at that form here. So yeah, I haven't really done anything special to this form aside from using the inject QRules feature to inject QRules into the form, but other than that, it's just pretty much basic info path stuff here. Okay, so we have one more question coming in. Is it possible to do a cross-site search from this new list form? So the list forms will have basically whatever functionality form we already have in FormsViewer. In some situations, you can query across sites. In some situations, you can't. It sort of depends on the situation. The rule of thumb in doing cross-site queries is you want to have FormsViewer installed in whichever parent site is above those sites, and then access FormsViewer from there. That doesn't necessarily have to be the same site where you're actually using the forms, or actually the same site where the libraries and lists are, but it should generally, you want it to be a parent of that if you're looking to do any cross-site stuff. Good question, though. Okay, so on to the next feature, which is rendering PDFs. So we showed this in our webinar a few weeks ago. We've now added the ability to render PDFs within your forms in FormsViewer. You can both render them as InfoPath attachments, so to have them in the form as an attachment. And also you can convert them to raw base64 values, which would allow you to do things like sending the PDF to DocuSign so it can be signed. We actually did demo that in the webinar that I mentioned. And sorry, we have another question. Can you pop up another browser window from the list form, complete a function, and then capture the result back to the form? So basically, yes, you can do that. You could have a link within your form which opens another tab, and have the user work within that tab, and then close that tab, close that tab when they're done with their stuff, then come back to the original form, they'd have to click some button or something to actually query whatever new information had been submitted or saved. But it would be hard to do that automatically just upon closing the other form. But you could set up something of that nature, yes. So to get back to render PDFs, this is enabled via a new QRules command called render form command. This is actually a command we have in the InfoPath version of QRules, and it's used for a slightly different purpose there, but we decided to sort of piggyback on top of it for this PDF functionality, and then maybe at some later time we'll add the original functionality into this command as well. So right now, render form requires a format parameter of PDF. That's the only allowed option at the moment. For backward compatibility with the other command, we made it a required parameter. Views is a view name, the name of the view we want to generate. Even though the parameter is plural, currently it only allows one view. And by default, it will render the current one. Currently, you can output base64, which is a typical InfoPath attachment, or base64 raw, which is the binary data without the special InfoPath stuff in it. And you can also specify a file name for the rendered file. So let's just go into a demo of that. So I've got my trusty expense report here. And just threw this in a bit haphazardly, but we've got this generate PDF button down here at the bottom, and we can see that just a simple rule on here. I'm doing render form format equals PDF and specifying a file name, and what that's going to do is it's going to put the rendered PDF binary data in QRules' result field. So after rendering the PDF, I'm going to copy the result into a field here in my main data source. And that field there is displayed, as a file attachment. So let's see this in action. We'll go over to FormsViewer. I'm going to open up my, let's see, expense report PDF. Okay, so my name is Jimmy, ID number 12345, job title, developer. Okay, all right, I think that'll do it. Click Generate PDF. So right now it's sending a request off to the backend to render the PDF and then get back the rendered file. So as soon as that's done, there we go. We've got the attachment in my form. I can click it to remove, download, replace. I'm going to download it, and there we go. You can see I've got my rendered view. It's got my values in it, and we're all set. So I know there are a couple of people who have been looking forward to this feature. I hope that people get some use out of it, and let us know if of anything we can do to improve it. All right, on to the next feature, which is date formatting. So another pain point we've had for a while in FormsViewer is that calculated value boxes did not support the date formatting features to format dates. So the way we usually worked around this was to use very complicated XPath formulas to format the dates into the format that we wanted. This is now supported. So let's have a look. I want to go back to my templates. Date formatting demo. And you can see here that as I select any date here, it's displayed, that value is displayed down as multiple calculated value boxes. We can see what that looks like in the form. Just some boxes here. The third one is Georgian. So I don't know what that says. I assume it's the month, day, and something else. We've also got Japanese, a couple of different numeric formats. So not only can you position the values in different arrangements, you can also use different locales and different languages, which is should be really great. Okay. Rule editor. So this is something we've been working on a lot for the last couple of weeks. We've said that we're planning to add the ability to edit your forms within a browser. So this is our first step in that direction. It's a relatively small step, but just to get things moving, and we're going to continue working on this next year. So let's have a look at what this is. So I'm going to go back to my PDF form. And we can click the design button here to open up our design view. Some of you have seen this already. This is previously called our QRules Builder page. We've now changed it to be called Forms Designer. You can still get the QRules stuff, the SharePoint mappings and things like that, but now we've got this tab here called Rule Editor. And basically, what you get here is that you can pick either from a field or you can pick from a button. Oh, looks like we've got a bit of a bug here. So let me refresh this page. I'll make a note of that so that we can fix it before we release these changes. Okay, so let's have a look at our button rules. And what button rules does is basically you pick any view within the form. I'm going to pick the main view, and then this will give you a list of all the buttons within that view. So we've got close form, expense, add image. This shows you the ID of the button along with the text that's on it. So this one is just an arrow from the looks of it. And I want to modify my generate PDF button. So right now this generate PDF button has one rule on it. It's called render PDF. Let's change that name. We'll call it render PDF now. Okay, and we can see here the two actions on it are to set the command value to render form to this command, and then copy the result to the request PDF. So let's just say I want to call the files my expense report when I render them. Okay, so I've just made a small change to that command. I'm going to save my changes. All right. Okay, so what that has actually done is it has modified the XSN stored within FormsViewer, updated it to change that rule. You can also, of course, use this page to add new rules, delete rules, things like that. And if I actually downloaded this file, which let's go ahead and do that. Oops. Okay, we can come down to this button here and see that the name has been changed and the command has been changed. So without without doing anything in InfoPath, I've actually changed that rule, as you can see. So now I can open the form up. generate that PDF again. And there we go. The file name is now myexpensereport.pdf. So yeah, editing rules in the browser. This is sort of a beta feature. We're not sure how useful people are going to find it in its current state, but I hope that you guys try it out and let us know what you think. And we will continue to improve it and add new form editing features as time goes on. All right, so let's see what's up next. Dropdown bug fixes, and I think this is the last item. So some of you may have noticed some very frustrating bugs related to dropdown boxes. The first one was that if you had a dropdown box that was populated from a secondary data source, what would actually happen when you selected an item would be that it would show the item after the one you selected. So let's have a look at what that's like here in, this is our current production site, so it doesn't have the bug fix just yet. We're going to be publishing that out in a couple weeks. But as of right now, you can see here in this second dropdown that if I select A, the dropdown is going to actually show B, even though the value of the field has changed to A. If I select the first one, it'll show A and be blank. If I select the second one, it'll show C, and so on. I think you get the picture. So that's extremely frustrating and confusing for users. The workaround up until now was just to make sure that the dropdown didn't have any blank values in it. But now we have fixed this bug, and you shouldn't have to deal with this any longer after we release new FormsViewer in a couple weeks. So just to show you that it's working, we can see I select A, B, C, and there we go. Working nicely, just like a drop-down box should. One other similar bug was that if your drop-down box was populated, had hard-coded selection values, and one of them was a blank option with non-blank display text, what would happen if somebody selected that blank option would be that the display text would actually be stored in the field. So back to our production site, we can see that if I select B, this one has hard-coded drop-down values, so it doesn't have that shifting problem when I select something. But if I go back and select this first option, we see that the field value actually changed to select ... even though it's supposed to be blank. So here in our test site, we can see that if I select another value and then select the first item, correctly goes back to blank. So these are some fixes that I've very much been looking forward to, and I'm glad we're going to be able to include them in the next release. So at this point, I'd like to do a quick poll just to see what you guys think about these new features. So I'm just going to launch that poll up here. Okay, thank you very much. It looks like 2/3 of you said performance improvements, and the other third said list forms. So yeah, look out for those new changes coming very soon. So so that's it for the new FormsViewer stuff. Just a bit of an announcement that we're doing a FormsViewer training class soon. I'm not actually, it doesn't seems that the date is not on this slide. I'm sorry about that. But we've done FormsViewer training every couple of months up until now. just to go through some basics, integrating your forms with SharePoint and mobile enabling them. This next class is going to be very similar in content to the ones we've done already, but we will have a couple of changes. So if you want to register for that, you can go to this URL down here, qdabra.com/en/education/class.aspx. Hopefully that has the date of the training on it, and we hope to see you all there. So that's it for the presentation. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Or if not, I'd like to thank you very much for attending, and thank you for choosing FormsViewer. When is the expected release date for 2.4? I'm not sure of the exact date, so we've just finalized the new changes. Well, we'll be finalizing the new changes tomorrow. We're going to have about a week of testing and bug fixes, maybe a little more. So I'd presume the new release will be out within 2 weeks, definitely before the end of the year. And I forgot to mention, we are including some rich text box improvements that I didn't mention or show during this this demo, but we've just made a couple enhancements there that should make them a little easier to use. All right, well, it looks like that's it for questions. So thanks again, everybody, for coming, and hope to see you again at another webinar. Bye for now.